Barry Kelly grew up in a tough district in Liverpool where gang culture had taken root. By his mid-20s, Kelly was deeply involved with the East Side Boys, a Merseyside organised crime group run by brothers Jake and Callum Burrows. He wasn't just a street-level dealer. Kelly became a trusted lieutenant in the gang's hierarchy. Prosecutors later described him as being a link between all the illicit activities in the gang, from Class A drugs to firearms dealings. In other words, Barry Kelly had his hands in everything, moving heroin and crack cocaine, sourcing guns and overseeing deals. His reliability and nerve earned him a reputation within the gang as someone who could get things done. This rise from a local lad in Speak to a key gangland operative was fueled by the profits of drugs and guns, and it came with a heavy dose of violence and risk. Kelly's ascent coincided with a surge of gang warfare on the streets of South Liverpool. The East Side Boys were determined to control Speak's drug trade, and they were willing to use terror to maintain their grip. In the space of just 14 months between 2016 and 2017, there were 10 shootings linked to turf disputes in the community. 13 people were injured in the crossfire, including an innocent toddler caught in one spray of bullets. Neighbours in this tight-knit community were left living in fear as the rival gangs battled over territory. Barry Kelly's rise happened amid this chaos. He proved his loyalty by helping the gang smuggle Class A drugs and stockpile firearms, bolstering their firepower for the ongoing gang feuds. It was a trial by fire on the streets, and Kelly's actions showed he was all in. Each deal he arranged and each weapon he moved up the chain cemented his standing in the crew. By 2017, the once small-time dealer had become a major player in a gang that ruled its patch through fear and intimidation. Under the Burrows brothers' leadership, the East Side Boys flooded the streets with drugs and an arsenal of guns. The gang's cash read like an armory: a vintage Saint Etienne revolver, a high-powered Tikka hunting rifle, multiple Smith & Wesson revolvers, sawn-off shotguns, and more. They even buried some of these firearms in the local woodlands to hide them from police searches. Barry Kelly's role in this was pivotal. He acted as a gun runner, ferrying illicit weapons between suppliers and the gang's stash houses. When the East Side Boys entered a turf war with a rival crew, Kelly helped ensure that his gang was well armed for the fight. This included linking up with Christopher Wallace, a notorious bomb maker from Wirral, who had access to firearms and even homemade pipe bombs. Through Wallace and other contacts, Kelly and the Burrows brothers secured new guns to outgun their enemies. It was an arms race playing out in the back streets of Liverpool. Drugs were the gang's lifeblood, and Kelly was deeply involved in that trade as well. Heroin and crack cocaine were trafficked in from outside cities and sold on the street corners. The crew guarded stash houses, properties used to store drugs and cash, and weren't above cuckooing vulnerable people out of their homes to use as bases. Cuckooing is a tactic where criminals take over someone's home, often a vulnerable resident, and use it for drug dealing. One known hub was a family home on Eastern Avenue in Speak, owned by gang member Lee Price. Price turned his home into a drug den, where runners collected supplies and cash, making it a target in the gang war. In fact, rivals carried out a drive-by shooting at that house in a bid to intimidate the East Side Boys. Bullets ripped through the walls of the Eastern Avenue property, terrifying local families and showing just how far the conflict had escalated. Each violent incident like this only drew more police attention to the area. On the streets, the East Side Boys tried to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. They used unlicensed scrambler bikes to zip between alleyways and parks, knowing that police cars couldn't easily follow. Dealers would normally ride off roads to deliver drugs or evade police patrols, riding through the maze of housing estates.